Brilliant.
Nice.
That's good.
Passed the first test there,
That's
mate.
excellent. Yeah, it was way better than my first attempt. Oh dear. You'll have to see a previous episode for that.
To be fair, that one went far off.
That was hilarious. I watch that often because it just makes me laugh. All right, here we go. Hey everyone, this is Adam here with the Hear2Listen podcast. Welcome. I'm here with Steph.
Hello.
And Max.
Easy.
And Seamuss. Hello, Seamuss.
Hello, Adam.
I feel like there's been something of a run of podcasts that we're going to be doing coming up with the formula being around addiction. So it started with Sean on our podcast. For those that haven't seen that, he was sentenced to life. He had issues with alcohol and then went in prison, got on a treatment program that Seamus was also part of within the jail, and then has got out and done wonderful things with his recovery. You'll hear that word a lot today. I think recovery is, once you start working in the industry, you start using that word, meaning, people that maintain a recovery. It's not just you go on a thing and you're fixed. There's an ongoing sort of system of recovery that you have to maintain. So yeah, we started off with Sean. I thought it'd be brilliant to get Seamus on. We've got Nuno coming up as well. I think you know Nuno, Seamus, coming up in a few weeks. So yeah, and I've also seen, I've got a newspaper by the side of me that's just about addiction as well. It's a front page story about there being an increase in addiction deaths in the Milton Keynes area where I'm from. So there's conversations I think to be had about the COVID and the impact, and I've often thought to myself,
is that updated since COVID? Is that COVID?
What, this?
Yeah, is it local?
The spike? No, but the increase in deaths due to addiction, is that tied in with COVID, do you think?
Well, they're just sort of doing it as a stat compared to last year. They're not really saying that,
right.
But I wonder if there is kind of an impact, and maybe you've got some thoughts on that as well, Seamus. But before we get to that, I just want to give the listeners a bit of an idea. So when I worked on the WRAPT alcohol dependency treatment program, Seamus joined us initially as a sessional worker. So he kind of like dipped in and out, and then became more of a part of the team a bit later on. I remember you, Seamus, as I would describe you as dependable, sturdy. There was a sort of presence in the room whenever I was in group with you of I felt more relaxed, I think I would say. And there was a sense of if I got a bit stuck somewhere, you'd always have an answer, or you'd always have a comment, or you'd always have an intervention to be made with the guys that we were working with. So, we were in the room with around 12 men in the jail that had joined us to try and resolve their alcohol problems. I think you've got experience working on the drug program as well. But what's your memories of that time? I know it was a while ago.
So I came to Bullingdon, which was obviously a prison full of offenders, probably about 85% of them there for, behaviour that was in some way related to alcohol and drugs. So huge, there's a huge kind of backdrop to offending, which involves chemicals, and this is commonly known. I came there as an addiction trainee, basically. So I was retiring from general practice, which I'd done for about 25 years, and I got interested in addiction predominantly because of my own journey. But I trained as an addiction counsellor, and Bullingdon was my placement. So I went to a prison to do a placement. You train as a therapist, you've got to do a placement where you actually are supervised for a certain number of hours to see clients. So Bullingdon was where I trained, and then when I finished that, they offered me a job, and which I took. So I worked at Bullingdon for probably about 3 years. That's where I met Adam.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoyed it. The problem wasn't the guys. The problem was the system. Actually,
The system.
The system.
some of the guys, and they were all sorts. You know what I mean? But the common thread between all of them was they had this illness, this condition. They had use disorders of one sort or another. And if it wasn't alcohol, it was probably other chemicals like cocaine or meth or crack or heroin or whatever. And And I was there really because, you know, that's what I did, and that's what interested me actually, and still interests me.
Mm. You mentioned before about like because of your own journey, you found yourself there, and I know that as a GP, you know, 25 years it sounds like, and I don't know how much of that featured in your own journey, as you say. I mean, we have spoken, you know, we're talking addiction, like you had your own issues with addiction, and you found your way onto the program, and I wondered if there was a connection between your own recovery, finding your way into the field of addiction, and then finally working there. What was that part of your journey?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, so I was what you would call an impaired doctor, really, which meant I drank too much. and it eventually got out of control, you know what I mean? And I eventually got to a point where I'm attempting to treat this on my own in secret without asking for help. And then you start self-medicating and using, you know, things like Valium and then painkillers and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden you're in a mess. And it was a mess I couldn't get out of. So, you know, this is part and parcel of the addictive process. You get into behaviour which becomes almost impossible to quit, even though you'd like to. And there are increasing negative consequences that come with that. So it no longer becomes social, basically. It becomes something that you kind of got to do to function properly. So I eventually got to a point where I couldn't do it, and I had to ask for help. So I eventually went into treatment, and I engaged in a program that was a solution for addiction. And I mean, I still work that. I mean, you know, I picked up an 18-year chip last week, which means I'm still working that program. And it changed my life. And as a consequence of that, I became interested in addiction as a doctor and switched from what I call general practice to become an addiction therapist, which for me is just a different kind of doctoring, really. It's much more about talking therapy rather than reaching for my prescription pad and writing out, you know, a drug for whatever ails people, which I think there's far too much of, I might add. I have quite strong views about that, actually. So I guess the deal is and I looked at a lot of solutions for addiction, predominantly because I was interested in solutions for myself. But B, I wanted something that worked, and by worked I mean something that took me out of something that allowed me to live comfortably. Okay, without this constant kind of sense that I was being owned by stuff, which is what addiction gives you. It gives you that sense where you're in kind of bondage to stuff, really. And I didn't like to live like that. So, as I say, all my investigations led me to a program that was designed by alcoholics for alcoholics, and it stood the test of time, and it's still working. And the RAPT program delivered that program on a daycare basis to offenders who had problems with alcohol and drugs. And as I say, some of them engaged with it. I mean, some of them were there for all sorts of reasons, but some of them actually were genuine about the reasons that they wanted to, you know, look at that whole program further. So that's sort of how it developed, I guess.
I think it's actually really incredible that you actually noticed that you had this problem and you decided to make that change yourself to ask for help. Because I find a lot of people, they struggle with that.
You have to be there as well. We spoke about this with Sean, didn't we? It's all right. Like in the prison situation, the programs that you guys done, some people there, we got this from Sean as well. I got it from something you just said as well, about some people were there for different reasons. Some people there to tick the boxes, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
You highlighted that. There's obviously some people there genuinely wanted support, wanted help. What I was going to ask you was, what you obviously got to that point. You just said that you wanted to take action. You found this program and you put your all into it, basically, because you were at that point. How do you get people at that point? They have to get there themselves, don't they? That's the problem, because we all know people that have got addictions, but it's like you can't help that person. I think Leon brought it up, didn't he, with his mate on a few pods ago, saying that he's tried to help him. He's tried to help this mate that he's known for years and years and years, but his mate's head's not there to be saved yet. He don't want the help, or it's not that he don't want it. He's in that situation where perhaps he does feel like he's bonded to that drug way too much and he cannot live without it. It's a horrible situation, but that program for you, could it have been any program is basically what I wanted to say, because you was at a point where you wanted to get help or you wanted to sort things out. You found this program, which you say hasn't changed since the day that it was made, and it's made by alcoholics. For alcoholics, which is amazing. And obviously they know what's going to work. But is it something that would just, if we put it in front of someone that's fully addicted to X, Y, and Z or whatever, are they going to get the same things? They're not unless they're mentally there, are they, basically? I think I've answered my own question pretty much.
Yeah.
You have answered. You have answered the question, Mac. I mean, bottom line is, look, what goes with this condition is it's an illness of perception. You can't see it. Okay, and for years, I couldn't see it for years. So my journey lasted about 30 years. I was off the rails as a teenager. So I drank, for example, for effect all the time. I couldn't see the point of drinking without getting pissed. Now that's not, you know what I mean? That defined me as having an alcohol use disorder, and something like 1 in 4 men in the UK have got an alcohol use disorder, which is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal number. But it's something you can't see. When you're in it, you can't see it. And there's this whole kind of, backdrop of time where your perception is distorted. I mean, a lot of other people can see it, but the guy who's got it can't see it. The only thing that ultimately draws your attention to it is when the pain of what you're doing gets bad enough, then you're up for change. And until that happens, you might as well be, it's all kind of, you're wasting your time trying to engage with it. So I think one of the greatest provokers of change is pain and discomfort.
Do you remember your moment, Seamus? Sorry to jump in, but do you remember, I've heard about alcoholics referred to the moment of clarity. I don't know if that applies, but can you say that there was a moment or a month or whatever that changed your mind?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was in this shit. Like most doctors who get into trouble get reported to the GMC. So my professional body was informed about some of my behaviour. So they wanted an explanation for it. And it's like, I'm not going to compound this by, lying. That was it. It's like the cat's out of the bag. I can't hide this anymore. Okay. This is the truth. And of course I was facing the possibility of losing my profession. And I had no option. I was pretty much forced. It's like a guy goes to prison. You've got no bloody option. They've got you. They got you by the short and curlies, basically, and it's like you either deal with this or you face the consequences. Now, that was painful, and it was that degree of pain that certainly put me in a place where I had to start looking at it seriously and looking at the evidence. And then, of course, when you start looking at the evidence seriously and totting it up, and you see all the negative consequences going back through your life, you can only come to one conclusion. So it's like, the writing's on the wall. But with all addiction, there's this process. They call it denial, actually. But it's about, I can't see the truth of what's going on.
Did you have, sorry to step in, did you have any people around you, family, friends, that would tell you, like, I think you've got a problem or anything like that?
Well, it depends because I would classify myself as a high bottom drunk. All right.
Okay.
So and on the surface of it, my life is fine. Okay. So I've got like 2 cars on the drive. I've got a job. I've got a family. I've got all of this stuff. But internally, I'm dying. Okay. And there are many, many, many people who have got this condition who are what I call high bottom. You know, they're not living on on a park bench drinking out of a paper bag. These are people. I mean, Churchill was an alcoholic. Thatcher was an alcoholic. I mean, you can't get higher bottom than that sort of stuff.
No.
But it's actually what it does to you inside, really. Emotionally, I was at rock bottom, basically. So all my relationships were conflict. You know, I was in conflict. I was like war zones with this sort of stuff, really. So you can hide it. You can hide this condition very well. And there are many, many, many people that I would call highly functioning that can hide it very well. I mean, I came back from Hong Kong in December, and I was working in an outpatient treatment unit out there, delivering a program for people with addiction, and all my clients were high bottom. These are like bankers, lawyers, teachers, traders, all earning big money, but totally out of control. Does that answer your question, Steph?
Yeah, it does. It is scary, actually.
Because when you say like that, there is many people, like you say, and whenever someone says an addict or someone who's on drugs and stuff or an alcoholic, the first thought, like you just said, park bench, brown bag, bottle for the alcoholics, and you've got your druggies, and it's all grimy and grimmy. So many people cover up sort of stuff, and we spoke briefly about this, about the different forms of addiction, and this is why I wanted to bring it into sort of current situations because of what's going on in the world. I said about a month ago now, I feel addiction, people are going to become addicted so much more. Not necessarily to your drink and drugs and alcohol. It could be anything, because addiction takes form in many shapes and sizes, doesn't it? I've become addicted to editing. Sounds funny and that, and what addicted? But I've said to you many a times, it's not an addiction. It's almost like an escapism. So I use it, but then I know that I've got quite an addictive personality, which is why when I did stop going out raving and all that sort of stuff, it's probably the best thing I ever done, because I'd probably still be doing that sort of stuff if I hadn't made that jump back then. But yeah, I just, whether it's caffeine, sex, sugar, or it could be anything, like gaming. Addiction is such a broad sort of, but does it all stem from the same sort of craving, the addiction, that need? It don't, does it? Because it's such a broad sort of...
I don't know if there's common themes there, Seamus. When you look at the variety of different addictions that we can all fall into, have you found any common themes in the work that you've done? What does it really come down to? I mean, I've got an answer for this, but I'm curious about yours.
I don't know if you allow me. Can I share a screen?
Please, yeah. If you can certainly give it a go.
I'll just throw up a model that I use just to indicate to people the extent of what we're up against here. Okay, I can. So it's what I call the addiction tree, and it divides addiction up into different kind of groups. The common one that everyone associates with addiction is what I call chemical substances, okay? Which is anything that I'm pretty much putting in my body. So it involves all the standard stuff like alcohol, cocaine, heroin, meth, whatever you like, prescription medications, food you can add to that, and so that they would be the substances. Then you've got people addictions. You've got what I call activity addictions. So there's sort of about 5 main groups basically. So there's people addictions, which involves sex, love, relationships, negative control, intimacy, anorexia, and then we've got activities like crime, excitement, pursuit of power, pursuit of money, image. Thought addictions would involve things like fantasy and then the feeling addictions, and the commonest one there is anger. People using anger to get what they want. The common theme in all of this stuff, all of that stuff in the canopy, is this is the stuff that people use to either get them to a place of ease and comfort or reward, or it's stuff that they use that relieves discomfort. The discomfort usually is associated with sometimes relationship conflict. And then you'll see the other half of that addiction tree, which I talk about, is where this stuff comes from. And rooted in all addiction is this whole concept of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coming out of your developmental childhood. Most people will have an experience of some form of trauma,
mm-hmm.
and most of it is what I call complex trauma, which is like drip feed stuff, not big trauma. This is lots and lots and lots of little, just little put downs.
Mm.
So in your family of origin, you might have controlling parents, for example. In the schools that you go to, you might have been bullied. All of this stuff fits into that type of experience.
Mm.
And it takes people to a place of discomfort. And they develop personalities called a codependent personality. And once you've got some of that stuff, by definition, you're going to get into conflict with people. And people treat discomfort and the pain that arises out of their life with all this stuff that sits in the canopy of the addiction tree. And if you look hard enough, almost everyone, if you scratch the surface and stress them enough or make them anxious enough, will exhibit some of this type of behavior.
Mm.
The common one, like negative control, all right? That's a very common one. And you'll see it mostly in parents who've got kids or teenagers who are a bit off the wall. And they use all sorts of negative strategies to try and get what they want, you know? Like punishing, like manipulating, like threatening, like bribing, like whatever, you know? So the whole concept of addiction is the biggest public health problem facing mankind in the 20th century. And I know we talk about cardiovascular disease and people dying of, and what underlies all that? Addiction to sugar and refined flour, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everywhere. If you look hard enough for it, you'll find it.
I think we did actually say, when you said about scratching the surface, you've said that before as well. Scratch away at any surface and we'll start to see signs and stuff. Yeah, it's so true. Just that, again, sugar though, when you look at that, you've cut that out in your diet quite a bit. I think unless you have unless people have a lot of knowledge and parents or parental guardians or carers that care about health and diet and stuff, we have all been brought up in a world that sugar, for example, is in everything. They said that they'd done a documentary, it was a fair few years back, and it was to show how addictive sugar actually is. And they tested it on lab rats, cocaine, sugar. The sugar won every time. The rats kept returning to the sugar. Obviously, I don't know what the decision was, the be all and end all, but they kept going back into that sugar. That's crazy. That's crazy. And when you look, because you took it out your diet, I looked into doing something similar just to try and better my health a little bit. But it's in everything. Literally everything that we have got in our house at the moment, there is some form of sugar in there. It's like, what's that all about? That's to keep us addicted to the certain foods that they're promoting and stuff. And so you talk about the system, you're not liking the system in whatever you was using that sort of as a metaphor. I'm using it. We didn't really have a choice. We've been eating food, processed meats and foods and all this unhealthy stuff for so many years that it is such a battle for our bodies to actually give up that addiction. Like you went through, when you done it, how long did it take you to stop sugar?
It took a couple of weeks, and I'd gone through the headaches and the sort of mental clarity returning, and there's definitely physiological differences that I noticed as a result. But like going back to what Seamuss was saying about, if you experience enough pain, then it's time for change. And a lot of my sort of internal digestive issues were really problematic for me, and what alleviated that was changing that diet. So like you said, isn't it weird? Like it's just connected, like, the addiction, you don't really know you got it, kind of thing. Like I was fully into like all of the food related stuff and thinking, no, that's fine. I just have like a cake bar every day, I have carbs with every meal. It's like everyone does that. Look at the pyramid, the food pyramid, you had lots of defense mechanisms, I think, to justify the continuation of it. And I do believe it's still quite a new thing with people changing that. I mean, it's getting around, but it took a degree of discomfort. But you said
you got the discomfort. Not everyone's body. For me, for example, I eat a lot of unhealthy food. I eat a lot of healthy stuff, but it's call it a balanced diet if you like, but I don't know. But say someone like myself, you know, I haven't really experienced much discomfort. I know that I'm not as healthy as I could be, but some people may not get that discomfort and say until it's too late, until their arteries are all blocked up and they have a bloody heart attack or something. But not just that, people don't know they're addicted, like you say, because no one really knows until they stop doing that thing. Like we said the other day, phones. So phones, like we've been working in schools for many years, seen thousands of students. And I remember my first group work session, or one of the first group work sessions on Health to Mind, was discussing social media. It come up, depression, anxieties and stuff, and social media was always at the forefront. And there was a young girl in the class that said that she actually left her mobile phone with her friend because she was going on a family holiday and she wouldn't have any data or Wi-Fi. And her mate was then going to text off of her phone to her friend's phone. So she's got two phones in her hand, because there's a streak on Snapchat where if you text someone every day, you get different emojis pop up. And they was on over 100 streak plus. So every day for 100 days or even longer, it might have been 300 or whatever it was, they'd been texting each other because they didn't want to lose that, what do they call it? What do they call it?
It's a streak.
It's a streak, isn't it?
Streak,
They didn't want to lose the streak. She felt the need to leave her phone. And that made me realise how addictive phones and social media and stuff was. But even more so this last month, when we've been talking about the social dilemmas, the interviews and the podcast that we've been watching. And Russell Brand, I think it was, he said that if you want to know if you're fully addicted to your phone, put it down, leave it, don't go back to it, and see what it does to your body. See what your body goes through. And see how many times it tells you to go over to that phone. You get the phantom ping in your leg. You'll start to feel the vibrations in your leg because you got a notification. Your phone's not even in your pocket. Your mind is continuously like drawn back to that phone. Wondering. Anxious. Feel like you've lost a limb. You've left something in another room and you're not in touch with the world. That's an addiction right there. And I think that's going to be the worst. I know you said about I don't know, what's the most highly, what's rated as the most addictive sort of trait? I don't know. When you talk about addiction, I know mentally we all think about the drink, drugs and alcohol and stuff, but I'm saying social media and technology and that, all right, that's going to be up there over anything.
What's the most addictive? I'm not sure really.
It's different for everybody, I suppose.
I suppose sugar would come pretty high up on that list because pretty much, everyone's into it in some form or other. Yeah. I think relationships is another one, actually. I got to have this person in my life for me to be all right, that sort of theme.
Yeah, that's very common, actually.
Yeah.
That was me, man. That was me. I remember because I always went into long-term relationships. And I don't know if it was is it me feeling like I needed to, or if I didn't like to be on. I don't know, but I just weren't a slag. I weren't one of them people that went about. That's what it was. I'm going to own it. I weren't. I weren't that guy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. Yeah, like that's my argument. Anyway, we'll see.
Have you got any thoughts on sort of these modern phenomenons? Because there's a time that phones didn't exist, in their sort of current form, this digital behemoth that we carry around with us. Have you seen any changes in your work or anything like that around it? Or
I mean, look, I'm not sort of down on a lot of this stuff, really. It's for me, this is personal choice. So it's like, nothing wrong with heroin. There's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. You've got to make up your own mind what it's costing you. That's all. And then you might want to do something about it. So in and of themselves, mobile phones, iPads, all that digital stuff, it is what it is, and people will do it. It only becomes significant when it's costing you. Okay, so all right, you love your mobile phone. What does it cost? What does it cost you? If it's costing you more than money, okay, it's like, well, I found that because of my mobile phone, my relationship with my partner deteriorates. Okay, and I've lost the connection with them, and I've got my nose in. I spend vast amounts of time not getting anything productive done because I'm playing, I don't know, Fortnite or something. You understand me? It's whatever. It's
It's all moderation, isn't it? Once that takes
absolutely.
over, anything. It's
neither good. You work out. So I don't have a downer on any of this. Everything that is essentially rewarding, or that releases, all the pleasure neurotransmitters up in your midbrain, is potentially addictive. You have to decide, what's it costing me, and do I want to do anything about it, and do I want to change it? You mentioned Russell Brand. I got a lot of time for Russell Brand. He's a guy who's actually, I think, brought the solution to addiction into what I would call the public domain. A lot of people have been introduced to what I call 12-step recovery as a consequence of what Russell has talked about, and I've got a lot of time for that.
I prefer him now compared to when he used to be on the host and all that stuff. He was very flamboyant and he was all over the place. His podcast,
yeah,
he's a different guy now, isn't he? He's definitely a different guy.
He was always a bit of a showman, you know what I mean? And that in itself is addictive. And he would be the first to admit that, actually. This pursuit of fame and, this having to be the center of attention, actually. You see it in its various forms. And, so it's a very, very, very interesting topic, really. But at the end of the day, it's about, what do you want to do? And this is the way I work with people. This is entirely up to you. I'm not going to therapy you well. It's like, I will point you at what works given your predicament in life. Okay, what is it that this is costing you? And do you want to do anything about it? That's the $1 million question. If you don't, carry on, fill your boots.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a quick question though, Seamus, because I'm thinking about my kids at the moment. I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I'm having this battle. And I don't use the type of methods that you spoke about, the manipulation, the bribery, or anything like that. I just try to educate them in a way that, too much of this stuff is going to be bad for you, right? It's not great to sit there and spend 4 hours staring at a TikTok reel, just watching loads of random videos. Some are funny, some will put a smile on your face, and some will release those endorphins to make you feel good. Yeah. But there's a lot of depressing, negative stuff, death, suicide, addiction, all that stuff pops up on these platforms, and they shouldn't be watching it anyway. So I know that too much of anything can be bad, and I don't want them to get to their teens, because my little boy is almost there already, and go, last 3 years, what have I done? Apart from stare at this, become depressed, deflated about the stuff that I've seen and I want to aspire to be, but actually all I've done is sit and watch it. So advice, I don't know, is there any sort of angle? But I know from a parent's point of view, kids don't always want to listen to their parents. And I don't want to be a negative one. I don't want to have to sort of enforce the laws. But I do wish I could turn back time sometimes and go, no, I don't care that they're going to the park on their own nowadays. They're not having a mobile phone. We'll just get something else to contact them. Because I didn't have all that, do you know what I mean? And there was none of this worry. But it seems to be such, especially because of lockdown and stuff. And I know it's easy for parents to go, look, do you know what? Just go sit on your iPad. Go and do this. But it's a way of educating people. I think there's got to be a way to educate these youngsters. I've actually thought about putting them down and letting them watch Social Dilemma, or making them watch Social Dilemma, because I'm not actually telling them. I'm requesting that they spend 2 hours of their life to watch this documentary, but then will they even understand it?
Yeah, you reminded me, Rogan tried that with his kids. And
did he?
And his daughter went, this is stupid. This is stupid. What's this? This is rubbish. Right. Yeah.
Rogan did make me laugh the other day because he was talking to someone, I don't know who it was, but he was talking to someone about his daughter always being on TikTok. And he was like, I can't even take her to the shops anymore because as soon as she hears a song that's on TikTok, she just starts doing all this weird stuff with her arms. You look out, right? We don't see many people shopping these days anyway, but next time you see a kid or a young teen, aged anything between the age of, say, 5, 6, up until like 12, 13, maybe 15, 16, I don't know. Yeah, even 16, 17, actually, the ages that we work with. Music comes on that's on TikTok. They will be, if they're not, they might be the quiet ones that sit there just doing this and they're not actually moving, or they'll actually just full go with it and they're just in the shops like doing all these weird dances. We brought it up in session the other day. There was 3 young girls in our session that kept on playing TikTok songs, and they was all doing the dances and that. was like, look, it's great. Like, I know this one. I actually know how to do this one. My little girl taught me this one. I was like, but what's frustrating? When clubs do open and you lot get to go out and experience a nightclub, you're all going to be doing exactly the same dance. I was like, no one's original anymore. Everyone just does this because Charlie DiMatteo, whatever, what's her name? That young girl, she does a dance. Everyone copies. It's like, I can't wait to see, like, not that I'm going to go clubbing and stuff, but just to walk in and see everyone doing exactly the same.
It feels like there's joy to be had with that. Like, you know, we can sort of criticise the phones, but that sounds like a fun thing to do. And like, if I walked into a shop and saw loads of people doing a similar dance, that'd be hilarious. That seems like it's adding value.
They're being conditioned. They're brainwashed.
I suppose they're bored going around the shops with their parents, but I suppose if you're actually out, like I've recently been to Rome and I was at the Spanish Steps, which is absolutely incredible, but then you got like these 3 young girls on there doing a TikTok, and it was like, guys,
and then you got their mums doing it as well. It's not even the youngsters though, is it? It's
no,
not.
It's not. There is a lot of adults doing it as well.
Yeah, I've taken part in one out of Ms. 60 in her library. I actually took part in one, and do you know what that was? It was just me opening the fridge and then turning around to a bottle of water being chucked in my face. I was set up, that was it, and I was on her TikTok for it. And do you know, I think she got the most views on that one, but I was just standing there like, and Sarah was behind recording, so she was part of it. So if I would have done that in this house, you would have gone mental. You'd have literally gone mental, made me clean up. They're just both heckling away. Like, I'm like, this is what it's come to. All for the views, all for the views. So yeah, that's my predicament. But
I mean, I don't know really if there's much of an answer for that. I would say
if Rogan couldn't get his daughter to sit down there watch Social Dilemma, I don't think I'm gonna have much chance.
I did want to go.
I mean, this whole business of relating to other people and influencing youngsters, I guess. And I'm just a great believer in what I call emotional intelligence. It's like if you might as well forget trying to get them to do stuff, but you are allowed to share how you feel about what they do, and that's So if they're doing something and it worries you, there's a reason for that, and the reason might be that actually you're maybe a bit scared about it. That's the stuff that you need to be owning, the truth. You understand me? Yeah. So getting into all this negative control or angry or manipulating or whatever, it doesn't work, and kids will do what they want to do. The best thing you can do is to continue to look at self, what's going on for me, and share that, because that's authentic, real, honest, and they relate much, much more to that. I mean, it might not stop them doing it to start with, but at least you've got a relationship with them, and when they really need you, they'll come back to you. I mean, I say this as someone who had a son who had the same illness that I did, and I watched him pretty much piss away his education during his teens, out there doing, God knows what. And he got hooked on ketamine and almost died, actually. And all the way through it, I had to work what I call a coda program, which was attempting not to control him, set a boundary, and express how I felt about what I saw. And eventually I got to a point where he was ready. He was ready to do something about it. If I had gone the way I'd really wanted to do, which was to kick his ass and throw him out, I'd probably have lost him, actually. Yeah. So I do believe that, and it's like it's a form of tough love, but you're there, you know what I mean? But you're there and you're authentic. And I used to tell him, it used to break my heart watching you, actually.
It's crazy because a lot of people say tough love would be that. Kick them out. Give them some tough love. When actually you hit the nail on the head. That's the worst thing anyone could do. I think this is really beneficial for parents, actually, at the moment. So any parents that are listening, they're going to really sort of like some of this stuff, because we all make mistakes, and I don't doubt for a second there might be some parents listening right now that are thinking, right, I've probably gone around this the wrong way. Like, they've got kids. I know that I had mates back in the day that got chucked out. One of my mates, I'm not going to say his name, I think it was at Stratton Upper School at the time. He was living in his brother's car because she'd found out he was smoking cannabis and stuff. giving him that tough love, you know, teaching him that actually you shouldn't be doing that because this is what's going to happen. When actually, I want to say, you know, I'm talking about. It doesn't matter anyway. But he just probably needed his parents to tell him what he's actually doing to them. Do you know what I mean? So it's a good way of looking at it, and I think that story that you said about your son, that's just That's
How is your
awesome
son now,
of-
Seamuss?
He's got 8 years of recovery under his belt.
Nice.
Good.
So he went back to university. So he went to treatment in Luton, actually, and got well, got into recovery, joined Cocaine Anonymous, stuck with that, and went back to university, got his degree, and he's just finished his a master's, actually. So it's like...
no, good for him. At least he
nothing's lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like
he realised himself that it was his time to change.
absolutely.
I think.
So I was able to help him when he was ready, basically.
If you'd have done what you said though, and been that anger parent and the manipulating or bribing him,
I would have lost him.
You'd have lost him. No relationship. He wouldn't have come back.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take some advice from this and actually start planting them seeds. Not even seeds, but just expressing the reason to why I get scared of how much time they're spending on these platforms and some of the stuff that I've seen. And if I share those experiences and them feelings, like you say, it may not work straight away, but in a couple of years' time, when he actually thinks about it or she thinks about it and goes, his heart was in the right place, this is what my dad was on about. But I weren't horrible about it. I've just expressed it, and and again, lead by example. Like, so again, I'm fighting a battle to my wife, highly addicted. She'd say I'm addicted to my phone. We're all addicted, but to another level where hours could go past and she's on it. So it's about having those conversations again, not just with your kids. I'm gonna have that conversation with Sarah. If she doesn't hear it on here first, it's coming your way, babe.
Seamus, it reminds me a little bit of like some of the elements of the 12 steps where there comes a time where you kind of look at your life and then you make amends where you can. And it sounds like with that authentic honesty, preempting anyone getting into any sort of 12-step treatment, at least you're presenting them with some evidence of the effect that whatever they're doing is having on you as an individual, and sort of just leaving it with it, essentially, you know, because that's the stuff that you come back to in 12 step. You can't, you know, you're mining it, mine, and you're getting all this stuff out about the effect.
I'll just say this about, you know, like the way 12-step recovery works is effectively it's a personal program of change. Okay, that's it. It's like I get to a point where I've had enough of what I'm doing. It's not working, and I'm up for doing something different. So it's a personal program of change, and you work on yourself. And it's attempting to work, doing the right thing for the right reason in all my affairs. And they call that, I mean, another word for that would be spirituality. And I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about the right thing for the right reason. And you start off with being honest, okay? Can I be honest about what's going on? That's a great spiritual practice. So it's about attempting to develop what I would call a change process. And for that to happen, I have to develop new neural pathways up here in my brain. Okay? I'm wired, given my education, conditioning, family of origin, all my history, I'm wired to operate in a certain way. I have to learn how to do things differently. And by that, I mean, I've got to lay down new wiring. And the way you do that is by getting into new action. You don't do it by going to the doctor and getting to write you a prescription. I don't know any drug yet that lays down new pathways. Okay, and that's something that's worth remembering. I get into laying down new pathways by doing stuff.
Then repetition to seal it, I think.
That's
as
it.
well.
Repetition. You've said this as well, Adam. Again,
Yeah.
it does all come in with I've done a lot of meditation and stuff, and it's about sort of the reprogramming of the brain. We've spoken about this so many times. We've all been conditioned through family origin, through place of birth, and all of it, the unwritten rules passed down through generations, education, the system.
Yeah.
And it is about almost breaking out of that loop. Once you're almost in a loop, and unless you start to not just visualize it, speak it, act it, do it, believe it, see it, all right, and start, and repetition, persistence, keeping at it. You was talking about it from a language point of view, from swearing. Do you remember? We're saying, like, obviously, my previous job before this, like 9 years in the building trade, and language, like swearing, was just like second nature. Boom, boom, every other word, boom, boom, boom. So I've really had to tailor my speech and stuff, but it becomes an infill. A swear word is, it's all comes, that you were saying, it comes down to like vocabulary or lack
so
of.
there's an instinct sometimes, and then you're doing it without thinking, which is kind of recovery, isn't it, Seamus? You know, you get to the point where you've done it repetitiously enough that it becomes, you've laid down that new wiring. And I did want to go back a little bit, given your sort of medical experience, that I think I've speculated that as a society, we're also conditioned to, when we've got a problem, we go to our doctor and he'll give us something to fix it. And I think when you look at the subjects that we've talked about from addiction point of view to diet points of view, you know, I sought help from my doctor, and then I found another way, and it was actually took a lot of action, and it was very self-driven action based on some information and advice that I'd got.
That was from Dr. Google.
Dr. Rogan. There was certainly, I keep mentioning Rogan, Seamus. If you're not familiar, Joe Rogan, massive podcast. He's done loads of cool guests that have directed my life, certainly. But I think that's one of the benefits that we've got as a society as well, that we actually exposed, ironically, to a lot of information through our phones that can be beneficial to us as well and point us in that right direction. But yeah, the sort of recovery side of things, actually the medical side of things, I sensed some objections, let's say, you know, about how you see the medical profession at the moment. You know, you've said that there's nothing out there that you'll get prescribed that will rewire your head. So are you then suggesting that there's not much merit then in what's prescribed and it's...
So, I mean, this is a personal point of view here, and given what I've seen, okay, and I say this as a doctor, really, as a retired doctor, that I think generally the whole concept of addiction is very poorly understood by my profession, the medical profession, okay? And I think you go to your doctor and you're depressed, or you've got social anxiety, rather than him reaching for his prescription pad and writing you out an antidepressant or, an anxiolytic or whatever, which is another chemical, basically, okay? I would like to see him prescribe you a year's therapy, talking therapy, and if necessary, twice a week for an hour.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's exhaust talking therapy for all of this life stuff that affects people, rather than... so that's my view. I don't believe chemicals, except in very, very prescriptive and defined conditions. I don't know, like an antibiotic for an infection, for example. I don't believe a lot of these psychoactive chemicals that are all driven by big pharma, actually, to be honest with you. And if you look at the track records, they come out with a new variant psychoactive active drug quite regularly, and they have been doing for years. So that's my view. I think talk therapy is about laying down new pathways. It's about encouraging people to develop new behaviors. And it changes people's lives, and they don't have to rely on some sort of chemical prop, basically, which they eventually get hooked on, basically, as well.
Yeah, like one of my close friends, she was going through a really, really toxic relationship, and I could be the best friend and give her the best advice, but she was like, I think I need to go to see the doctor. And I said, yeah, like, see about like counselling. That's probably what's best for you, blah, blah, blah. She was like, no, I know it is. She's been down the antidepressants route before, didn't go very well. So she went there with the intention that this is what I want to do. I want to have some sessions. Anyway, she come out there with a prescription. We'll put you in touch with a therapist. Great. 6 weeks later, somebody phoned her to arrange a pre-appointment. It's lacking. She didn't take the medication. She didn't even go get it because she didn't want to go down that route.
Some people wait 3 years, man. Like 3 years just to get seen and stuff.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
How many people get fobbed off for those medications? And this sort of, I mean, we've had posters around here when we first started Health to Mind, like what can an antidepressant do that a bit of health-related fitness can't? And not everyone wants to work out, but I don't even mean like boot camp and like proper like full-on exercising, but just actually practical stuff or meetings in groups, even just meeting group work and that sort of things. The doctor should be recommending or pushing people to that route rather than any prescribed drug.
Yeah, because actually doing levels of fitness, exercise, it actually takes your mind
off.
Or
talking, just other people that have been in that situation, or little group therapy sessions or one-to-ones. We've got talking therapies under our name, haven't we? Here to Listen talking therapies. It does work wonders. And a lot of tutors do ask, like, how do you guys do what you do? We talk, we listen.
And we're human. We've been through a lot of life experiences as well. So I think that's as well.
Do you think it'll ever change, though? Do you think the doctors... I think if ever there's going to be a change, it will probably be this time that we're in at the minute, because there's a massive transition happening in the world anyway, with whether it's technology, with the current situation, the pandemic and all that sort of stuff. But do you reckon they'll ever get to a point where they go, actually, this is what we're going to push out. We're going to push anyone that comes in with any anxieties, any disorders, sort of mental health disorders or depression or anything like that. We're going to do this. I personally, this is my opinion, not the opinion of Here to Listen. I personally don't think they will, unless, I don't know, the people really sort of speak up about it, but they won't. The reason I don't think they will is because, like you said, a lot of the prescriptions are owned by these pharma companies. It's all money. It's a business. It's an enterprise, right? They make a lot of money. These private pharmacists. There's so, like you said, there's so many different organisations where these drugs come from, and a lot of them we're taking. Or not we, me, but people are taking where it is antibiotics or whatever it is. Their track record on previous drugs that they've brought out. If people actually looked into these companies, they're taking these drugs, they know it's just, it blows my mind. But people are still adamant that going to the doctors, getting that piece of paper, going to get their medication is the best thing to do. When is it? I don't think it ever is. I can't ever see that changing, which really, really, as Peter Griffin says, grinds my gears. Like literally, because I hate them. I've seen people deteriorate for antidepressants, taking that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, Seamus, that you've come from that kind of medical background and that your profession now is very much the talking therapy and the talking cure. And as we start to wrap up, we've got to wrap up fairly soon. I wanted to bring in like your company and your business and what's been going on for you at the moment. I understand that you've got like an online counselling system.
Well, I do. I mean, so I've moved now. I'm no longer doing face-to-face stuff. So I just do online counselling, basically. I talk to people. Predominantly around addiction, but I do deal with people who are depressed or anxious or whatever, and for me that works. So you know what I mean. At the end of the day, I'm a great believer in just being a pointer, and I'm a great believer in people have the resources within themselves to get well if they want to do that and if they want to change. And it is very much about setting up new behaviour patterns and encouraging them to do that and showing them that they can do it as well. It's very important.
Allowing people to take responsibility for their own recovery by the sound of it, because going to a doctor, you really are handing over responsibility, like fix me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not knocking doctors. Doctors have a certain use in certain situations, all right? I don't believe in the realm of mental health that we've got it right at all, actually. And look, if I've broken my leg, absolutely, I want an orthopedic surgeon, and if I need a plate, he's going to plate. You understand me? I get it. Fantastic, not a problem. But when it comes to this, I don't think we're anywhere even remotely near dealing with what goes on up here between people's ears. So that's my kind of take on it. And yes, COVID and all this lockdown stuff has made stuff a lot more miserable for a lot of people.
Have you
made
seen,
a lot of people?
Sorry, have you seen a difference within your clients that you're doing your online set? Have you seen a difference since COVID to now? Like we're back in another lockdown. Is it taking effect?
I mean, I've got about, I don't know, 15, 20 regular clients. But and that hasn't really changed much. But I tell you what, I was in between the lockdowns. I was up at my local tip lately, and the bottle bank there was completely awash with alcohol bottles. I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was like the bottle bank was completely covered, and the ground for about 20 yards around it was just covered with bottles.
Yeah, I think the lockdown's definitely got, especially parents and stuff as well, working from home, or that, you know, they've got the kids at home. It's been a stressful day, that kind of thing. I know people close to me, and some not so others, have actually started drinking more than what they used to. And they've got nothing to do.
Well, I just look at it, I've been drinking double the amount of coffee, right? When I'm at home. If I work at home, I'm drinking, whereas here, I'll have one, maybe two in that pickup. At home, I'm having one every hour, every half hour sometimes. And I think that caffeine, that's a strong drug, right? People take that for granted. You ever decaf from caffeine? Stop drinking caffeine tea, caffeine coffee. I've done it for a month. I had the shakes. I literally, when I had my first coffee after that month period, I didn't even do a month, 3 weeks I lasted. And I had a coffee from Greg's. And having that first bit of caffeine, I was like, whoa, like literally. And I don't get that no more. But that's because I'm immune to it. And my body's getting more immune to it. And it just becomes part of me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
no, like
strong drug.
We've been working at home for the last week. And normally by now I've had 2 teas and a coffee. This morning I've only had a tea and a coffee. And like I know that I'm craving a coffee or a tea right now. And I'm starting to get a bit of a headache. And I think that's why.
Sugar.
Yeah, it's
Some
just
sugar.
Help us, Seamus.
Help us.
Describe us.
But yeah, the website is talktoseamus. Is it .com?
Yeah. talktoseamus.com. .co.uk actually.
Okay, we'll include that in the description of the episode, along with any other links that you want to provide us. But it's been great catching up, Seamus. You haven't changed, too, mate, honestly.
I've actually found it really, really interesting.
No, it's good. This is something that we could talk about on many episodes. Addiction is going to come up. Everyone deals with it or doesn't deal with it is the question. But especially the organisation that we are and the connections we've got and the audiences, potentially the young, the older, like we're mixing that. We've got a big niche of people that would benefit from this sort of information, and even more so. So I could definitely see there being a follow-up.
Yeah, and I certainly, I'm sure you agree, Seamus, I value being in professions where you can raise the bottom up, as we used to say in 12-step treatment, you know, rather than let everybody hit that rock bottom. You as a facilitator or any interventions that you make is an attempt to kind of bring that up so you don't have to fall so far. And because we're working with younger people now, and, you know, being able to kind of spot those early signs and just have a conversation or you know, those kind of things is great. Yeah, I enjoy that part.
Absolutely. For sure.
Great. Yeah. Okay. We're going to wrap up now, Seamus. Thank you very much. If you want to stick around after,
all right,
we'll sign out.
Thanks for asking me to speak. Thank you very much. Good. And thanks, Steph and Max.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Nice one, man. We've been here to listen.
Okay.